It's good to be back, and it's I'm very grateful for time away, and we got to spend time with our precious family. Got everyone jumped into one house up in Sebastopol for a few days, and it was really great to see the oldest and the youngest of our family now, and also grateful to know that when I go away, that there are capable presenters, speakers who can stand here and deliver an inspiring and a powerful message. And that happened last Sunday with Barbara Mincer, who was so grateful for so well done. Such an example of someone who really knows her craft and delivers it with such power and presence and authority, and is very moving for all of us. I watched it last night. So I want to get into our series, which is continuing. We're resuming our series on Emergence, but I wanted to say a couple of things about our upcoming process next Sunday afternoon. I highly want to commend this to you. You know, the best thing that a community can do is to come together and to take the best of what we would consider to be our deepest values and our vision and our mission, and then to distill the heartbeat of the community. In other words, to tap into what's moving in people, where their heart is, and what they would like to commit to, how they would like to get involved, how they would like to see the community evolve. And so we have had this process of the conscious conversations where many of you have sat and given great information and input to those who have interviewed you. And now we're in a place where we want to distill that information. We want to see where the patterns are of what's moving in our community and where we want to go together. And so we have a very excellent consultant who we have retained, and she'll be with us all next weekend. She'll spend time with me, she'll spend time with the board on Saturday, and then on Sunday, we have this community meeting where we really would love you to be here. Whether you are part of the Conscious Conversations experience or not, it's important for you to be a part of how this community envisions itself going forward. So I commend this to you. It will be well done. She is very skillful, and it will be fun, engaging. And unlike some of our community meetings where it's just information going to you about what the community is doing, this will be really about forward-thinking activities. So please join us after the second service next Sunday. So we are in the 6th week of our Emergence series, and this week we are talking about embracing what appears broken. And we love spiritual principles that say that it's all good and God is good, and this sort of positive thought philosophy that is unity, really works for us when we are lying down in green pastures. Yes? And not so much, or let's just say the challenge becomes much greater when we're not lying down in green pastures, when perhaps the drought has come into our life and the grass is turning brown, or maybe we find ourselves in the valley of the shadow of doubt, and we are then challenged to say, is there only one presence and one power and one life, and that is good? That's when the rubber meets the road, yes? So I wanted to talk to you today about that, because here's what we need to remember together, is that if there is only one presence and one power in the universe, then there can be no exception to the rule. So we look at that in a sort of a logical perspective. In other words, we either accept the premise that this is an absolute truth, and following it through to its logical conclusion does not allow it to find any sort of detour or variation. Otherwise, the premise is not true. And so it does require that we do accept this as a truth and then look for the evidence of its truth, so that we don't find ourselves believing in what is false when life takes a turn. And that's sometimes the challenge of living this life, yes? So I want to begin, well, I've already begun, but I want to begin again with this story from the Hindu tradition. It is like the Hindu tradition's version of the prodigal son. And, almost every tradition has a story of the son, or it's usually the son, but of course we know it has nothing to do with gender. It's the offspring of the divine, which we all are, that takes it upon itself to think that it could live better on its own. And so it leaves home. It departs from this knowing of the one presence and the one power of providing all of its needs and decides it can do better on its own. So this one takes a little bit of a twist on that. And it starts with a story of a disciple named Naroda. And Naroda is very much like you and I. He's just trying to get his stuff right. He's trying to live, the spiritual life. He's praying, he's, maybe doing the Course in Miracles, or, he's trying to eat slowly and mindfully and, be in the present moment and meditate and do yoga and, make sure that all of his, chakras are in alignment. And, he's just doing everything he knows how to do. He's rubbing his oneness symbol every day, and just dealing with the stresses of life and just doing the best that he can. And so that's what he's doing. And he has this great devout love for God. And so, excuse me. So Vishnu, the Lord of the universe, appears to Naroda. And he is the creator, the destroyer, and the preserver, right? So Vishnu says to his disciple, because you have been so devout and your heart is so open, we want to grant you a boon, a reward, anything that you want. Just ask, and we will give it to you. And Naroda says, oh, my Lord, what I most want is to know the sweet essence of Lady Maya. And Maya represents illusion by which you both reveal and conceal yourself in the universe at the same time. And Vishnu replies, well, other seers and sages have asked that question before. Never really worked out all that well for them. You might want to try to ask for something else. Ask anything you want and you can have it. But the disciple is insistent. He says there's nothing else that he wants more than that experience. He said, I want to know the sweet energy of Maya, the illusion, so that I can understand how you are both here visibly and also here invisibly as well. And he says, well, if that's what you want, I will take you on a place and show you about the sweet, sweet Maya. And so they go up over a bridge and under a shady tree, and Vishnu lies down and says, I'm thirsty. Before you begin, will you bring me a drink of water? And he says, well, of course, wanting to do the bidding of his most beloved Vishnu. So he goes off, Naroda goes off over the hill and all around, and soon he finds a well and with a house and a door, and he walks over to the door with his cup, and he knocks on it. And the door opens, and right in his face is the most beautiful maiden that he has ever seen. And he immediately falls into her dark, beautiful eyes, and he falls in love with her. And he sits down, and he has a feast with the family, and they sup together, and he falls madly in love with her, and she with him, and the father has a great family business, and he has them join the family business. And then, as it turns out, he has a great knack for this kind of business, and then he has a son born to him, and he's so happy. And the wonderful business of the father is going really great. And the father dies at some point, and he leaves him the business, and he quadruples the income. This is the green pastures, yeah? Life is going great, and he has another son, and he hires more workers, and he thinks to himself, 12 years later, that life has never been any better than this. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. It's wonderful. And that's when your affirmations around, there's only one presence and one power in the universe, God the good. Yes, I believe that. Look at my life, right? But then, the floods come. And the crops that the source of his income are destroyed. And the workers who work for him have no crops to pick. So they have to leave. And he's left picking the meager crops that are left over. But the waters keep coming. And even his beautiful mansion that he has built, that he has felt so secure in, that he bought for $400,000 10 years ago and he could sell for $1 million today, even that, too, is in jeopardy. He's standing there with his wife, and his wife is holding their son. And he has his other son in his arms, and he knows that he has to get out of the house. It's going to be underwater soon, so he keeps holding on, and he steps into the swirling waters. And he loses the grip on his wife and his child, and they're lost. And the one that he's holding in his arms, the water is coming up and swirling around, and even then he has to let go of his beloved child, and off it goes. And pretty soon the water is up to his neck. You know this feeling, yeah? Right up here. And he begins to call out in a loud, anguished voice, God, 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 I was the happiest of men. What happened? I was blessed, and now everything is gone. And no sooner has he said this than all of a sudden the water begins to recede and move down his body, and swirling around his waist and down below his thighs and down to his feet. And soon the only water left is the water in his cup. And lying on the ground with the same smile on his face as before is Vishnu, who says, sweet, sweet Naroda, what took you so long? You see, this is our story. You know, the myriad of ways that we wander off, away from our source, away from this one presence power knowing that you and I have. And we get so caught up in the dramas of our life that we forget that right here, always with us, is this presence, power, love. That the God of our knowledge and belief can never be apart from us. That the swirling winds of fortune and misfortune can take everything from us except what we are. Except the life that cannot be limited or diminished. The love that is unconditional. When people leave, the love that we are stays the same. When we lose something, the abundance that is our divine inheritance is not diminished or deflated. So the truth is, how long will it take us to remember? Jesus said, I am with you always. He said, there will be trials and tribulations. Yes, absolutely. Guess what? That's the given on earth. But be of good cheer. He had the unmitigated gall or faith to say that we could be happy in the midst of our trials. Is this because it's a spiritual bypass? Is it Pollyannish? Is it spiritual whitewashing? Is it denial? Or is it knowing something deeper and truer? I've been thinking a lot lately about this idea of purpose. You know, everyone's looking for their purpose. And that's good. But you know, there are a myriad of purposes across the multiplicity and diversity of individuals. And each one has to find theirs. But there's only one that we all share. And that one, and I mean the only one that really matters, is to touch the divine reality. is to know that you know that you know. There's nothing else that really matters if we don't have that. My mother used to say, Larry, if you don't have God in your life, you don't have anything. And when I was in my younger understanding of my faith, I would say, that's not true. I've got a Mazda RX-7. I have a beautiful wife and a child. I have a nice house. And one day, it came to me that I was empty inside. And then I began to realize that I was trying to fill myself from the outside in. Does anyone know this one? Yeah. And then I knew what my mom meant. And that began my spiritual journey. Denise and I started that journey together. And I realized some days that I can get caught up again with trying to decorate my life, you know? Redecorate, re-landscape, create better appearances in my life. And it's okay to do that, except if I think that it's going to compensate for what I feel is missing inside of me. Because it never can. It never will. It's not meant to. If it did, we would have, the whole thing would be a sham. And this whole idea of your spiritual reality would be out the window. But before you were a human being, before you became a form and a name, you were one with this one presence, one power, one life. And the fact that you and I have taken on a form and a name and a story and a biography and we have all this stuff in our life is a distraction, but it doesn't change the truth of what we always and forever shall be. And the remembering of that is the most important purpose there is, because it will change everything when you remember that. In this book, in the chapter on embracing what appears broken, he says, the universe has a plan, a pattern, an evolutionary idea seeking willing places for its ever-expanding expression. This idea, this evolutionary idea, seeking willing places for its ever-expanding expression. Are you a willing place? Are you allowing? Am I receiving that? Am I willing to be in the midst of life, however life shows up, and to remain a willing place for this ever-evolving spiritual reality to unfold? To be the primary vehicle, and to make that my primary purpose, to allow that spirit to be known in me as me before anything else. Even in the midst of chaos and destruction, it's conspiring for our freedom and preparing the soul for something more to emerge. Isn't that beautiful? Even in the midst of chaos. See, we tend to think that, when we're going through something, then we step outside of spiritual truth because we can't reconcile the facts and circumstances and appearances in our life with the notion of a good God. But that's because we're myopic. That's because we don't look deeply enough. That's because we're judging by appearances, which Jesus said, don't do that. And he says, and someone else actually said this, he said, become an inverse paranoid. An inverse paranoid, someone who believes life is plotting for us. Don't you love it? I'm going to become an inverse paranoid, where I'm constantly looking at all times, very vigilantly checking my surroundings, behind me and in every corner of life, to see how life is conspiring for me. Wouldn't that be a twist on an old theme. Because isn't the mind that likes to jump out and tell us how it is doing just the opposite? That's conspiring to look for what can hurt us, that's against us. But see, that cannot be true unless the premise is false. Because if there is only one power, one presence, one life, one love, that's absolute good and never fails, it never is limited, it's not something that comes and goes. It doesn't get swung in and out of, the stage of your life like, the old Greek dramas where they swing the God into this situation to disentangle some desperate thing that's going on. Not that kind of a God, but this is a spirit. Jesus said, when you worship God in spirit and in truth, and the kingdom of God is in the midst of you. And if that's the premise, then how can we ever be outside of that truth? So being vigilant for how this could possibly be working for me. This is the faith walk you and I are invited to take together. And have you noticed that what you tend to expect is what you tend to see? Have you noticed? And so we know how we don't say these things to make them true. We're not trying to influence what is already true. We're saying them because they are true. And we are only trying to bring the surface mind or the conscious mind into the league of the understanding that the soul already knows. So these affirmations that we're saying, we don't say those as sort of like, we're just trying to make ourselves believe something so that we feel better. We say these things because they're true, and we're wanting to let go of the mind and the story that is disconnected from the truth of who we are so that we can know and feel the well-being that is already within. It's not, I'll believe it when I see it. It's, I'll see it when I believe it. Just the way it is. So we have a challenge. I want to end with a funny story because I've been quite serious with you so far. And we'll close with a little prayer after that. But the story is of an African king and his most optimistic sidekick friend. And this friend is like the constant optimist. Maybe you know someone in your life like this. You like people that are positive, but this is the one that's just always saying everything is good and everything is great. And sometimes that can be a little bit pesky, right? So anyway, he's got this friend and he just always says this is good. So one day the king says to his friend, let's go hunting. So they decide to go out on a hunting trip. And on the hunting trip, the friend would prepare the weapons, the guns, load the guns for his friend, and load the guns for him and the king. But when he was loading the guns, he messed up. He made a mistake. And while shooting, the gun exploded and took off one of the king's thumbs. Ooh. The friend, seeing this, exclaimed, "This is good." How can this be good? You can imagine the king probably said something other than that. But for Sunday morning, it's the king fumed. How can this be good? But we know. This is not good. And upon their return, he ordered the friend thrown into the deepest jail cell. And sometime later, the king went on another trip. But not far from his destination, he was caught by a group of vicious cannibals who took him back to the village and prepared him for the feast, he being the main course. But when they saw that his thumb was missing, they sent him on his way because it's bad luck to eat an unwhole person in their culture. Interesting fact for you. Upon the king's return, he immediately had his friend freed, of course. And the friend stepped out of his jail cell, blinking at the light. And the king said, "I am so sorry." He's filled with guilt. "I'm so sorry, my dear friend. You were right all along. It was good that I lost my thumb. And it was so wrong of me to put you in jail." No, no, laughed the friend. It was good. The king is shocked. He says, how can you say that it was good? And the friend says, because if you hadn't put me in jail, I would have been with you on that trip. Yeah. So sometimes we do have to take extraordinary measures. We have to be persistent in wanting to see what our normal sight does not show us. And that's really what the faith journey is. If it was also plainly obvious in every situation how the divine could work this into a wonderful experience, into a greater good, into some sort of evolutionary high point, or some resolution that was better than holding on to the thing that we lost, then there would be no faith involved. But until we have that enlightened perspective, it does require us to put on, you might say, these rosy glasses. And these rosy glasses are not fanciful images of reality. They're not to deny what is really happening in our life. It's not to see what's really going on at the human scene. It's not even for us to not have our human emotions or to grieve when we lose. We're not saying that. But it's not the process that we go through in our human experience of loss and difficulty and challenge and brokenness. And it's how it ends up. It's where we decide whether this is for us or not. And the journey of that understanding is not complete until we have satisfied the question, how can this be used for good? Or what is the greater good that comes from this situation? And if we look for it, and sometimes it takes the passage of time, it takes the wisdom of patience and understanding to see the outworking. But it can be no other way. And even when we can't see it, we have to trust that the one presence, the one love, and the one life running this universe has the perspective that knows what is best, that is moving us to ever greater understanding of who we are and who we have come here to be and how we can play our role in this unfolding of God's will on earth. You know, it wasn't easy for Jesus, who was an enlightened one, when he had to face what would certainly be a tough one, yeah? And he had to walk through something that most of us probably never will. And so he had to walk through betrayal, torture, bodily death, and he neither condemned or judged or resisted anyone or anything, because he knew that the life force could not be extinguished. He knew that he wasn't just a body. He knew he could not be separated from God, and that his death would be a transition, a transformation, but not an ending. One more step on the ever-evolving continuum of life. And so you and I, you know, when we have our Gethsemane moments, when we're sitting there facing something that's very difficult, perhaps we can think of those who have gone before us, who have faced the most dire conditions, and have said, you know, I would just as soon trade this cup. But I'm really on board here for the divine plan. I'm on board here for the greater good that can come into my life or into this life and into this world. I want to be used for something amazing. I want to be used for something magnificent. I don't want to just get through another day. I don't want to just be able to pay my bills. Right? I want to be able to stand in the fire, trusting that that fire is transforming me from thinking I'm just this vulnerable human being to knowing that there's something to me that cannot burn and can emerge triumphant, more in touch with who I am and who I've come here to be and the gifts that I have to share and to give them unconditionally to the world. Ministry for Denise and I has been a series of joys and a series of losses. We've given up a lot. And I don't say that as a victim. I say that because we have been victorious, because we have realized more of who we have come here to be by letting go of who we are not and letting go of the attachments and the identifications of those things which come and go. I'm grateful for our life. I'm grateful for Denise standing in the fire with me. It has not been easy, but I know that we are the ones. We are the ones to do this. We were the ones to do this. We have answered the call, and we continue to say yes to what Spirit's wanting to do through us. Whatever that means, trying not to cling to how it's supposed to look. God's always got a better idea. Amen? Amen. Blessings.